Okay, Miss Miller, thanks for coming in to interview for the Elar position here at Dunbar. This position is going to be Elar and a couple of section of AVID. So to get started, I would like to ask you to let me know a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I have been teaching for 31 years. I started my teaching career as a band director. That's what my major was in. I taught band for a year. Really didn't fit what I was really wanting to do. So I stopped teaching and I worked at retail for half of a year, and then I got a job in a little town teaching general music to K through 5. Then I taught K through 6 actually, and then I taught middle school choir and high school choir, and also did the one-act play, sponsored cheerleading, sponsored student council, and all those good things. And I did elementary music for 22 years, and then when my principal moved up to a school, he asked me to move up with him. And so from that point on, I started teaching AVID, which is a very strong critical reading and writing college readiness type class. So I've been doing that for 11 years now.
Okay. And can you tell me what changed, or what one it brought you to Dunbar to apply?
Well, I was at a kind of a low performing campus for elementary school with a demographic similar to Dunbar. And I really enjoyed the students. I enjoyed the parents, just the community, and I felt I could really help the kids there. I was a good relationship builder, and I enjoyed my experience there. And we always, in elementary school, we would get the kids to a certain point, and then they get to middle school and they just kind of drop off. And so we spent a lot of time wondering what happens to them at middle school to where they just drop off. So I'd kind of like to find out what I could do to help the kids that I've taught in elementary school go on to be successful in middle school.
That sounds great. Well, with that, that's a great place to go ahead and talk about where we are as a campus right now. So as I've been here, I've taught here, and now I am the principal here, and the same for me. I feel passionate about the students of this demographic, and the school itself has gone through a lot of changes, even prior to my coming to teach. But it started out we had 2 middle schools on this side of town. They closed the other middle school because of the low numbers. The Dunbar was 1 year out of IR when they decided to close and consolidate the other campus with the other campus, who was very low performing, and they just haven't recovered since then. We've had about 5 different principals in the last 8 years. That's not including interims in that time. That's switched out in the middle of the year. We've gone through a reconstitution 4 years ago, and that was a hard thing that happened. It kind of changed the morale worse, if it could get any worse than it was. And so building up from that, every year we were changing and looking for something new to try as far as our management and discipline on our campus. We've tried a 7-step system. It took too long to get things put into the system. We tried what's coming back now around social emotional learning, called Give Them 5. That did not work. We just didn't have something to supplement the conversations that we should be having with children anyway. I feel like that was a program that we used, and it was great to build relationships with students and help new teachers understand how to talk to kids when they're a classroom there's a classroom issue, but it cannot stand alone as a discipline program. And then we moved into a new deal called the Granger model. We researched it. We went out to visit a campus that had implemented it and was very successful with the scores and with the it decreasing ISS and suspensions. And so we started out the next year, my third year there, implementing that system, and it did amazing things. Students started being responsible for their behavior. They started being more accountable for what they were doing or what they were learning and what they weren't. We'll talk a little bit more about that system later on. And then we implemented that, and with the change of administration, it kind of started losing its teeth because a different philosophy was implemented, or parent complaints weren't parent complaints made the district and our leadership rethink the system. And so we are going to, and so over the years that dwindled, but while we were still implementing, our test scores increased drastically. So here we are. Last year, we went into another semi-reconstitution. Our district decided to, because we were in our 5th year of IR, we had to make another change according to the state. So rather than close Dunbar's doors for a year, we decided to turn Dunbar into an ACE school, an ACE charter school. And there's going to be a lot of changes. And why I'm saying all of this is that I want you to be comfortable, if we hire you on staff, of all of the things that we're going to be implementing. There's going to be the system that I was talking to you about that works very well. And I know that since you were teaching in the district already, you're familiar with how it works, because a lot of other schools kind of started using that program as well with similar demographics. And so I want to let you know of the things that are going to change and what things that are new that we're going to do, so that you can be we can be straightforward about how things are going to work. Okay, so with all of the background knowledge and some of the things for Dunbar, let me go ahead and talk about this a minute. Across the state, I know that it's common for Elars to be stronger on their scores than math and that's the norm. Here it's a little bit flip-flopped. Our math scores are stronger than our Elar scores because our kids are just not reading well. So when knowing that, what do you feel, what kinds of strategies that you can use to bridge the gap between those students coming in? And like you said, they're coming in, some on grade level, some are not, and bridging those test scores with us.
Well, first off, in hearing that the math scores are higher leads me to wonder, what's causing that's a disconnect. So I would have to wonder, do y'all have an Elar coach?
We have an Elar coach and a math coach.
Okay. Yeah, I would.
She's been with us for 4 years. Kind of the little things that she does. This is the system that she has implemented with the teachers, is that we do stations. They do stations where there's and the kids break up in small groups. They have an I station. They have a Edgenuity station. They have a teacher station. And so
they're doing a lot of computer programs, which may be the reason your reading scores are bad. I'm not a fan of
Mm-hmm.
computerized reading programs.
Okay.
The Elar teacher is the expert as far as reading goes. And I think a lot of times when you get middle school teachers don't understand that middle school kids still need to be taught reading skills. Being an AVID, as long as I've been a part of AVID, the school, it needs to be kind of a school-wide shift as they focus on reading. When you have low reading scores, every teacher in the school becomes a reading teacher. The kids need to learn how to read different kinds of content. In reading, it's a genre thing, but in math, the math teachers need to be teaching the kids how to read math work, and that can be a math problem. But the kids need to know, for certain words they need to underline or they need to circle it if they don't know it. Just the kind of strategies like that, which is just a critical reading strategy. But they need that in every core content area, because when your reading scores are low, you've got to take a little bit deeper look at it. And computer programs are good for some things, but for students who are grade levels below in reading, they really need the help of the teacher. Now, the teacher station is key, because when the teacher the teacher needs to be hearing the kids read every day. And I know you have to have other places for the kids to go, but I would think there is a better alternative than just sticking them on a computer. To me, that's lazy teaching. I wouldn't plan on doing that.
Oh, that sounds great. And maybe we can talk to, we have PLC definitely here on our campus, which I'll be asking you about in 1 second. But I do want to know, I heard you say that everybody becomes a reading teacher. And I want to know, I wanted to let you know, like, we have our math scores. We focus a lot on 8th grade, which next year I want to move to that everybody needs to be a focus, because if we wait until we get to 8th grade, we're never going to get over that hump, because the 6th and 7th grade is going to continue to drag those domains down. But we have our 8th grade percentage in math, 81%. Our Elar is 60%. Our science was 53%, and our social studies was 24%. And so I really think that what you said about everybody needs to be a reading teacher is going to be really key to how we implement some things, and how you can help with AVID, implementing some AVID strategies maybe across the content areas to get even our, especially with our higher kids, our meets and masters to increase. I want to, I noticed here on your resume that you were the CAL on your campus, and how did you lead a PLC?
First things first, I always thought about it beforehand, what it was, that I wanted to talk with the teachers about, what we needed to work on. I analyzed a lot of data of the teachers to find out what their strengths and weaknesses were. We spent, a good portion of our time in professional development, because they need to understand, if I'm trying to teach them an AVID strategy for the week, which we rotated an AVID strategy a week, and then we share in the PLC how everything went. So it's up to me to model for those teachers what it is that I want them to do, so that they can then take that and make it their own in their classroom. So we would talk about the strategy, and then I would go into their rooms when I could, so I could model the strategy, and then when they felt comfortable, they could take over. And I found that's the most effective way to get teachers to, kind of to branch out, because sometimes teachers are hesitant to try something that they're not successful at, because they want to be, teachers are perfectionists. They want to be good at everything that they do. So practicing with them really helped them out a lot.
And not to ask when they're hesitant in asking those questions.
Right.
Rather than them not use that strategy, make sure you show them how to use that strategy.
Yeah, and they also understood that I wasn't going to go tattle to the principal. They trusted me, and that's something that I had to build with time. You build that rapport with the teachers, and when they really understand that you're there for them, and you want to grow your teachers, because the teacher isn't born a great teacher. They have to practice. And I think that when they understand that you're really there to actually support them and not to, write their name on a document and say, oh, you did this X amount of times. But that when they know that I was there to support them, they were much more willing to be open and honest with me about how the strategy was going. And if the strategy wasn't going right, then we kicked it aside and got a new one and tried something else, so that everybody was comfortable.
Okay. Did you guys go in with with your PLCs with writing CFAs? Did you guys do your own CFAs? Did you collaborate and give the same CFA?
The grade levels would kind of get together and write their own CFAs based on the TEKs that they were teaching for that unit, and then we will analyze their data also at PLCs. We spent a little bit of a time analyzing their own CFA data, so that the students that maybe didn't master it, they needed to pull in that next week to master that objective.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question about RTI, is how did you guys use the data to pick your groups or address issues that were low on your data, using your data to reteach?
Yeah, the CFA was the main driver for a while until we got, we did some map testing for data and stuff like that. But that's another part of Elar, that is when you have that teacher group that's hearing the kids read every day. So it is dependent on some of the CFA data, but also the teacher knowledge. Because when you're pulling kids and you're having them read to you, you may find, for instance, that a certain amount of kids don't understand how to find the main idea in a passage. Or maybe this group of kids has a hard time with definitions of words and finding the definitions based on context clues, or breaking the word down by its origins and things like that. So CFA does comprise part of it, but for reading, I ask the teachers more to do what they see daily in their pulled groups. And so for the next week, they would pull the students that are, say, low in maybe writing a summary. And so those students would work for a week with the teacher on writing summaries. And then the next week it might be finding the main idea. And the next week you might pull, for another objective. But I think it's better to me when the teacher is pulling those groups based on their own data.
And do you feel like, what percentage of the time do you feel like you should be pulling? Are we going to focus on the bubble kids? Do you feel like you would focus more on the tier 1 kids or tier 3 kids?
Oh, that's a hard question. I feel like all kids really can learn. And if you're you do have to differentiate your lesson. You have to, but I can't say that I would toss one group under so I could focus more with the others. I have a hard time with that. I know we're high stakes testing. I try to meet my kids equally, because I do have kids that are way below grade level, and so I'm going to have to work a little harder with them. I may have to pull them after school. And then my high kids, I know I need to get them up so my master's is, at a high point. But then also my bubble kids. They're all three groups to me are too important to sacrifice any or all of them.
Okay. How about your strengths? What would you say your strengths are?
Well, I believe my main strength is motivating kids. I'm I'm good at building relationships and showing students that I respect them where they are. I respect their culture. I'm not trying to come in and change them any. I want them to understand that I'm going to meet them where they are and try to get them to understand where they can't go. So that's why my biggest strength is motivation, motivating kids to be better and to want to do better.
Can you name a time that you've had to deal with a difficult student, one that maybe lacked that motivation that you helped to change and steer a different direction?
Oh gosh, can I pick just one? Yes, I had at my last school, I had a 6th grader that came in, and he was, AVID has pretty strict requirements on who gets to be in there. It's a invitation only, and it's an application and an interview process. But the counselor stuck a kid in my class who was just coming from our disciplinary, our district disciplinary system. So he had done, I never really learned what he had done, but I knew it must have been pretty bad because he ended his 5th grade year in that disciplinary program, and then he started his 6th grade year there. And so he came to me about the 3rd or 4th week of the first 6 weeks of school. And he was very disruptive. I called Mom on a daily basis, and she was stressed out, and, because he was doing the same kind of stuff at home. But after daily, I would kind of call it affirmations to him that I knew that he could be better. And I'll admit there was some bribery involved with candy. I know that's kind of not the right thing to do sometimes, but that with, he really knew that I believed he could do it. And his big focus was, he was going to play ball. He was going to play ball. And my standard comment was always, you're not going to play ball if your grades are in the tank. You're going to have to get your grades up if you really want to do something with a sports career. And after saying that, I don't know, hundreds of times, by the 2nd semester, he was doing his homework for me on a regular basis. I had assigned homework twice a week, and he was the leader. The kids really followed him. When he was off task, they were all off task. And so when he became kind of the leader in the class, actually, it was a remarkable turnaround. Now, I can't say that he was that way in his core content classes because he was still a 2. But for me, he was remarkable. But it took me a while to win him over. But I still hear from him to this day, and he's on the right path.
That's always a great thing to see some students be successful.
Yeah, it is awesome.
And come back and show you how successful they have been. Oh, okay. And so what would you say is a weakness that you have?
Boy, you're asking all the hard questions. Okay, in all openness, as a relationship builder, our tolerances as teachers are different in classroom behaviors. And I have a class that when I teach AVID, well, really in Elar too, kids are working in groups. So sometimes the noise level might get a little bit louder than some other teachers could put up with. So probably I would say consistency with, keeping the class at a volume that doesn't disturb some of the quiet students, because sometimes they shut down if the class gets too loud. So that's probably, I'm probably going to have to say consistency with some of my behavior issues.
Okay. And with that being said, could you name a time that you had a issue with consistency in your classroom management and how you approached changing that?
I have a girl that, again, she came in new to me, so she didn't have all the background and the relationship built up with myself and the class, and so I rode her pretty hard. You know, we had kind of a similar system to what you guys had, where we do a name and a check, and I mean, the minute she came in, her name was on the board, because I wanted her to understand that you can't come in here and just act the way, any old way you want to. And so she pointed out to me one day that there's a lot of people in the class that I let do the same thing she was doing, but I was putting her name on the board. And so I kind of took that to heart, and I really had to re-examine, you know, why I was being so hard on her, but letting, you know, my symphony get away with the same things that she was doing. And so I did have to work a little bit harder on my end at making sure I was treating everybody fairly.
And that reflection is an important tool. As we teach every day, we should be reflecting and making sure. So that's a good response to recognizing something that's inconsistent in the classroom. And okay, okay, if you would please name a time that you have experienced conflict with administration or someone else on your campus, and how did you resolve it?
Oh, let's see. My first year when I moved to this district, I was in charge of doing programs. And I mean, we probably did 8-9 programs a year. And so it was my principal's first year at that school, and he hired me. I was his first hire. And we had one of our big programs. We always performed for a group of business people that came in, similar to United Way, but they were community leaders anyway. And so for the programs, I mean, I did everything. I did the music, I did the dance, I did the actual program, you know, that you look at. And that was my first one that I had done, and I didn't put his name on the principal's name on the program. And he came in after the show was all over, and I thought he was coming in to, you know, congratulate me, because it went really well. But he started yelling at me, and I'm not exaggerating. He was yelling at me because I had left his name off the program, and how could I be so disrespectful to him? He had taken it personally. And I've done enough programs. I should have known better, and I guess in my rush to get things done, and I didn't do it intentionally, an inadvertent mistake, and I just apologized a million times and told him that I rest assured that he had all my respect. I respected him more than any principal that I had ever had. He was a really great person to work with. I don't know if he was having a bad day or what was going on, but you know, he kind of said, just make sure you don't do that again. And he stormed out of my room, and I went home and was worried about it all night, and came back the next day and went to his office, and I just apologized again to him and said, you know, I in no way meant to disrespect you. That was never my intent. I will make sure from now on you will be the first name on the program to make sure that everyone knows that you're the principal of our school. And I apologized again, and I mean, I never had another problem with him like that.
That's good. Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the things that earlier I mentioned, us going into the ACE program, and we're going to do that program on our campus. And so we're really looking forward to all of the new things that they have to offer, and hoping to see an improvement on our campus. Part of the initiative and part of the reason why we're doing this interview is because it's a requirement of the ACE program to hire highly effective teachers. And so in that hiring highly effective teachers, you get the $10,000 stipend. We do have to stay at school. I don't know if you researched that before, We do have an extended day, which is an extra hour to stay, and then we'll implement a no homework policy, where that's part of the day where the kids come in with teachers to finish and complete incomplete homework. And so we'll be going next year also to, we had an issue with hallways and tardies and kids fighting and hitting and vandalizing bathrooms and all of those things. I mean, in order for us to correct things, we have to acknowledge that they are a problem first and foremost. So those are the things that we noticed was a problem that needed to change. And so to fix several of those, like bathrooms and hallways and tardies and fighting, we are changing our schedule to more an elementary schedule. So we'll have houses that consist of a teacher from each content, and those teachers will have those students all day. And they, just like elementary, they will walk the students to each teacher, drop off and pick up. Within that house, that you guys will collaborate as to who's going to give bathroom breaks, when there's going to be bathroom breaks, how you're going to structure the pickups and drop-offs. Each class will be 84 minutes, and so we'll also be implementing with those houses and extra time social emotional learning. So I understand that we are going to be repeating the Give 'em 5 system, but maybe we're hoping for this year to thoroughly train teachers in the system so that it's seamless, and hopefully that the teachers that will be sharing students will be able to work closely with correcting or talking about a kid. You know, hey, the kid that, like you said earlier, may have been doing well for me, but I don't know how they were doing for their other classes. So then that way those conversations can be had among that house, and we can really concentrate on those students that need a little bit more intervention in that way. So with that house system and the collaboration that will be required, how do you feel about using your experience to making sure the house that you serve and the students that you serve, and even maybe reaching out beyond that, can do some cross-curricular work with reading, like you said, implementing it among courses?
Oh, I definitely think that will make it easier as far as the group of teachers that I would be with in my little house, especially social studies and science. I mean, those are two classes that should be reading daily. I hope I would have support. I don't know who the principal would be over that content area, but there's definitely a correlation between critical reading strategies and building those test scores in science and social studies, because some of the content that they read it's so highly specific in their content area, and actually some of the passages on past STAR tests have been science related. Even on the reading test, there are scientific articles, and sometimes those confuse the kids, I think, especially with the vocabulary. So I think if we could set up some type of a system where we're maybe have a common reading strategy as far as critical reading, marking the text, that's a good one, pretty good one to use across all content areas. That I think that would really help our test scores be much better next year. Okay,
that sounds good. Let's see. Even with the house, we're going to go back to some of the new changes that's happening at Dunbar. How do you feel about going from a traditional setting to a more I guess, controlled and not traditional in a middle school where the kids are being marched around. How do you think you would handle some of the challenges of those students? We are anticipating that the students are going to be a little bit restless, especially of the 8th grade, who's gone through a traditional system up until now, versus the 6th grade, who probably will be fine because that's all they know. So we are aware that those things are going to be challenging. So we're going to need to have the teachers to be aware and to be ready for those things to happen, and making sure that we're able to reflect together and collaborate to address the issues as we go. So knowing that, what kinds of things can you think of that we might be able to foresee and be prepared for?
Well, if luckily I've been in elementary, so I know how that system works. And as an elective teacher, when I was in elementary school, the hardest thing is always for the core content teachers to step up to that extra responsibility, because in elementary school especially, they're used to having their kids picked up and dropped off. They don't do any of the extra walking. They don't do anything extra. So I can anticipate that being a problem if any of the teachers here have never had to do anything like that. I know in my last job, some of the teachers had to walk their students to lunch, which, as a middle school, that's kind of a hard thing to have to switch to. So yeah, and I think too, when you implement anything new, you're right, the 7th and 8th graders are going to be, it's going to have to be consistent, like top to bottom, and we're going to have a lot of training on what y'all expect us to do and what the expectations are going to be. And I think I don't know if y'all have got like planned meetings for us and trainings for us in regards to the expectations of walking the students to and from class, and where we're going to meet, and how long that process should take, because how some teachers like to dawdle and waste their class time. I could see that maybe becoming the problem also.
So using class time, and
did
to transition if the kids are kind of out of control.
Yeah,
I can see that, and that's great. As our interview comes to a close, I wanted to close the last question with, why did you become a teacher?
Oh gosh, my mom. Well, first of all, my mom is a teacher. She was a teacher. She retired when I had my children. One of my older brothers is a teacher. So when I was little, I always played school in my room. When I'd play by myself, I'd always have a spiral. And when I was little, it's going to make me sound really ancient, but Elvis Presley was, the big thing. So my name was Mrs. Presley. So on the top of all my spirals, I would write Mrs. Presley, and then I would list my students, and I'd be giving them grades and, pretending wise. So I think teaching has just always been something that I have wanted to do. I would like to say that I woke up one night because God called me to be a teacher, but maybe that's what it